Hey everybody, this is Paul Eston Jr., aka Boy Green. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel and give this video a nice thumbs up. I hope you guys have been enjoying the NFL playoffs. I know I have. We've had some great games, but to be honest, it feels like it's missing something. And I wish we were in the goddamn playoffs, New York Jet fans. This past week, we celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the greatest moment of my New York Jets fandom when the Jets traveled down to Foxborough and beat the New England Patriots in the playoffs. It was awesome. Santonio Holmes, LaDainian Tomlinson, Mark Sanchez, David Harris, all those big-time players making big-time plays. But that was the last time the Jets were in the playoffs. That was 10 years ago. That's what's been missing, quite frankly. We haven't been in the playoffs since 2010. I want to get back. We want to get back. But to get back, we're going to need to add a few pieces this offseason. And one of the top things on my list is getting a true number one wide receiver. The New York Jets need a number one wide receiver. Gang Green hasn't had a homegrown one since maybe Keyshawn Johnson in the 90s. It's been far too long, Jet fans. It's time to go get our guy. Just look at some of the NFL playoff teams this year, for instance. Let's look at the Buffalo Bills. Their entire offense was invigorated by the addition of Stephon Diggs. I get it. I know they're our AFC East divisional rival, but they have the blueprint on how to build around a young franchise quarterback. While Josh Allen was developing, they traded for an all-pro talent to take him to the next level. And guess what? It worked. The Buffalo Bills are in the AFC Championship game. Stephon Diggs led the NFL in receiving yards this year, over 1,500. He led the NFL in receptions, 127. And he led the NFL in targets with over 160. A true number one wide receiver forces the opponent to game plan for you and know where you are before every snap. I'm serious with this. When is the last time the New York Jets had an offensive player in general that the opponent had to specifically game plan for? I mean, seriously, guys. A number one wide receiver can create for himself and win one-on-one matchups, or he could force the entire defense, the opponent, to double him, which will create another favorable matchup for someone else on the offensive side of the football to take advantage of. Again, when's the last time the Jets had something like that? I can't think of it. But watching these NFL playoffs has reiterated my desire for the New York Jets to go find their top wideout. And conveniently enough, Jet fans, the 2021 offseason is the perfect place to find one. The Green and White enter this offseason with the second most cap space in the league, and quite frankly, they could have even more with some roster finagling this offseason. After the Jets were pretty frugal last year in free agency, I think it's time to splurge this offseason on one of these talented wideouts. What we're going to do for this video is I'm going to break down some of the top options that will be available in free agency, and I'm going to break them down into my own made-up tiers of what I think about each of the players. Tier number one, there's only one player in this tier, and I'm not going to hide it. I'm going right for the jugular. Allen Robinson of the Chicago Bears. He's in a class by himself. He's got the size at 6'3", a crazy catch radius. If you just throw it in his vicinity, he can find a way to come down with the ball. And plus, he's played with horrible quarterbacks his entire career, whether where he started in Jacksonville or with the Chicago Bears. And he still put up video game numbers. He's 27, but he will be 28 by the start of the 2021 season. His market value per spot track, and this is a stat I'm going to mention with all of the receivers we talk about in these tiers, is projected what their salary will be, what their contract will look like in free agency. Speaking of, for Allen Robinson, he projects to get a 4-year deal for just under $80 million. That's a healthy average of just under $20 million, but it's 19.8 per season. That would put him among the top 5 highest paid wide receivers in the league. Again, this is the tier 1 meat. This is the best meat you could get on the market. Obviously, it's going to be a little pricey, but I think it's worth it. Sometimes you got to risk it to get the biscuit. Allen Robinson would dynamically change the offense for the New York Jets. He's my tier 1 player. Again, number 1 target among the free agent to be wide receivers. Let's go into tier number 2. Not as good as tier number 1, but still very good. And you can come away with a number 1 wide receiver. Kenny Golladay, a guy that has tremendous physical gifts from the Detroit Lions. A 6'4" frame, oozes potential. But his impact has been somewhat marginalized by a lot of health questions. In 4 professional seasons, he has only played in all 16 games once. Missing 17 games during that time span is something we shouldn't easily overlook, and neither should the Jets for the ones who are actually investing the money potentially in a player like this. When healthy, Excuse the Detroit Lions connection here, but he's proven to be a baby Megatron of sorts, and he'd be an instant upgrade over anything the Jets currently possess. His market value per Spotrac is a 5-year deal for over $95 million. That's an average of $19 million per season. That would place him among the top 6 highest paid receivers in the league. He'd be slightly cheaper than Allen Robinson, but he'd have to add a year to the deal in this potential scenario. Kenny is also 27, but he'll turn 28 in the midst of the 2021 season. Here's another guy in tier number 2, Chris Godwin, and he may be one of my favorites of all the receivers that could potentially be available in free agency this offseason. Speaking of untapped potential, Chris Godwin's career might be the definition of untapped potential with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Godwin, believe it or not, this is not a typo, it's not a mistake, is only 24 years old. He'll be 25 by the start of the 2021 season. This is the kind of player you guys want to invest in during free agency, betting on the future potential, projecting what they could do in your offense. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have a bunch of decisions to make this offseason with an embarrassment of riches at the wide receiver position with guys like Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, who they acquired as well. They can afford to let old Chris Godwin here hit the open market. His market value per Spotrac is a 4-year deal for $68 million. That's an average of $17.2 million per season. Compared to some of the other options we've already gone through on the list, what a great value and also a great talent. Chris Godwin should certainly be in the conversation for the New York Jets in free agency. Now we're going to go into tier number 3. This is where a lot of these receivers have flaws and issues, and it's still a big price tag. So again, the Jets have to seriously vet these options if you're going into this tier. I love tier number 1, obviously. I love tier number 2. Tier 3, I'm less excited about, but let's talk about it. Juju Smith-Schuster, former USC wide receiver, current Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver. And I'm going to be honest, I've really soured on Juju over the last couple of months for a lot of reasons. Asked me 6 months ago what I think of Juju and the Jets. I'm all about it. I love it. I love the potential. I love the possibility. But another down year for Juju, the stomping on the logos at midfield really rubbed me the wrong way, and him having a second career as a magician. Oh, you guys didn't know about that? What am I talking about? His disappearing act down the stretch is hard to ignore. Insert dad joke. Are you ready to pay this guy? Sure, he's only 24 years old and obviously has potential. Look at the numbers that he's been able to put up statistically. But there are some concerns, and he wouldn't be my first choice. More so a fallback option for the Jets. Market value, by the way, per Spotrac, a 5-year deal for $78 million, an average of $15.6 million per season, the cheapest thus far. But again, I always go by the saying, you get what you pay for. So interesting guy to pay attention to there. But again, less love here. If you would have asked me 6 months ago, I would have felt a lot higher about Juju Smith-Schuster. Let's go to Will Fuller, Houston Texans wide receiver. He's a speed demon from Notre Dame. He's been labeled a one-hit wonder, a one-trick pony kind of guy, but showed a lot more to his game this season. Although another chapter of his career has been injuries. And finally this year, when he stayed healthy all year long, he gets suspended. And there he goes. So go figure. Throughout his entire career, he has yet to complete a full 16-game season, whether by injury or most recently, suspension. There's untapped potential here, but too much cautionary tape for me to dive in on. I felt like he was still worthy of putting on this list. Market value, a 4-year deal for $67 million, a $16.9 million average per clip. A little too rich for my taste, considering the risk it, the pros and the cons of potentially signing a guy of this magnitude. Now we're going to go into finally tier number 4. These aren't wide receiver ones per se, but I'd love to see the Jets chase either one of these guys as scheme fits in this new Shanahan offense. Because, of course, Jet fans, we already know the Jets have a new head coach, Robert Saleh. We have that breaking video from a couple days ago. Also, Mike LaFleur will be the new offensive coordinator for the Jets. So we're already starting to see what that offense will be. Again, a Shanahan offensive copycat is expected by Mike LaFleur here at the New York Jets. Let's go into the 2 tier 4 wide receivers. First off, Allen Lazard. He's an exclusive rights free agent to the Green Bay Packers. Now, a lot of fans may just be hearing that now. What the hell does that mean? Well, it means he's a player with fewer than 3 accrued seasons in an expired contract. If his original team, in this case, the Green Bay Packers, offers him a 1-year contract at the league minimum, the player cannot negotiate with other teams. So the only way the Jets could realistically acquire Allen Lazard would be via trade. And with the options available in free agency this year, I wouldn't really love this option. I don't love the Jets giving away assets when there are other players available, but he has played in the Matt LaFleur offense, the older brother of Mike LaFleur. He is the Green Bay Packers head coach. So the fit in the offense would be interesting, but again, I'm not sure I would chase this one because of the potential trade that you'd have to give up, regardless of what you'd have to give up in the trade. And finally, one last receiver, guys, to keep an eye out for, and this is a dark horse for the New York Jets this offseason. Curtis Samuel, Carolina Panthers. This is a guy who, when Robbie Anderson was signed in the offseason, they said, Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, it seemed like another embarrassment of riches scenario. He must be on the move or should be traded. He wasn't traded. He spent the entire year with the Carolina Panthers and was a Swiss Army knife of sorts. He can line up anywhere. They lined him up at Wildcat, to the backfield, to the slot. Really, the possibilities are endless with Curtis, and that's really his most attractive feature. In this new Shanahan offense that Mike LaFleur will be bringing over to the New York Jets, he can be that Deebo Samuel type that you see with the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the Jets already have Jamison Crowder in the slot, but he's got an expensive cap number heading into this year and perhaps could be dealt. Regardless, Samuel checks off a lot of the things off the bucket list. He's 24 years old, will be 25 by the start of the 2021 season. Obviously, he's not a number one wide receiver. He's diminutive in status, but he's a guy that could help move the chains, keep things interesting on the offensive side of the ball. By the way, the market value for Curtis is a 4-year deal for over $47 million, an average of $11.9 million per season. That would rank 21st in the league among wide receiver salaries. Nonetheless, folks, the point of this story, the moral of this video, is the Jets need to get a number one wide receiver. Look how it affected the Buffalo Bills. Look at the Green Bay Packers with Davante Adams. What a number one wide receiver can do. It can open up everything else in the offense. And the Jets finally need that. They've got plenty of cap space. They were very cheap last year. Now's the time to be aggressive and try to fill as many holes as you can because free agency is before the draft. And while the draft will have intriguing names like Devonta Smith, perhaps the Jets would be better served filling those holes before the draft to create ultimate flexibility on draft day. All right, everybody, thanks again for paying attention to this video and why the New York Jets need a number one wide receiver. Make sure you hit subscribe and make sure you hit that thumbs up. We got a lot more great videos coming out. Hopefully, the Jets get their guy, and there's plenty of options this offseason.